I was holding a small tray of cookies, chocolate chips, his favorite since he was a kid. I had baked them early that morning, thinking I'd surprise him after work. It had been weeks since I'd seen him, and I missed him more than I'd ever admit. I forced a smile. I just thought I'd stop by. You weren't answering your phone. He didn't look at me. He ran a hand through his hair, sighing like I'd just walked in on a secret I wasn't supposed to know. Mom, I told you, call first. You can't just show up whenever you want. I have people here. You're embarrassing me. Embarrassing him. The word hit harder than the rejection itself. Behind him, his wife Emily stood near the counter, wringing her hands. She didn't say a word. I noticed how her gaze flickered between us, nervous, almost apologetic. My heart raced. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to bring you something sweet. That's all. He exhaled sharply, then muttered, just go home. Okay, I'll call you later. Later. He always said that, and later never came. I swallowed hard, nodded, and turned toward the door. The sound of laughter slowly crept back into the room as I stepped outside. The night air was cool, but I felt nothing but heat behind my eyes. I stood by my car for a while, holding that tray of cookies, watching the light from his living room window. Through the sheer curtains, I could see him talking animatedly with his friends, smiling, relaxed, as if I'd never been there. For years, I'd worked 2 jobs to help him through college. I'd skipped meals so he could have enough to eat. I'd walked to work in the rain so I could save money for his car. And now, I was an unwelcome guest in the house that love had built. That night, when I got home, I placed the cookies on my kitchen table. The house was quiet, too quiet. The ticking of the clock felt louder than usual. I stared at the cookies until the tears blurred my vision. I thought of the time he was 8 and refused to sleep without me reading his favorite bedtime story, The Little Engine That Could. He'd always say, Mom, you're my hero. Now, I wonder when heroes become burdens. The next few days passed slowly. My phone stayed silent. Every time it buzzed, my heart jumped. But it was never him. I kept replaying that moment in my mind, the look on his face, the tone in his voice. Maybe I had been too controlling. Maybe I called too often. Maybe I didn't know how to let go. Or maybe love simply wasn't enough anymore. That Sunday, after church, I ran into an old neighbor who asked about him. How's Daniel? Still doing well at the firm? I smiled weakly. Yes, very well. He's busy these days. It was the easiest lie to tell. When I got home, I stood in the living room staring at the framed photographs on the wall. Daniel in his cap and gown. Daniel's first day of school. Daniel holding my hand at the park. He used to tell everyone, my mom's my best friend. But friendships can fade when pride takes their place. A week later, I received an invitation in the mail. It wasn't from Daniel, it was from Emily. Mom, we're having a small dinner next Friday. I'd love for you to come. Please don't tell Daniel I invited you. I think he needs to see you. My hands shook as I read the letter. Emily had always been kind, gentle, even. Maybe this was a chance to fix things. I baked a fresh batch of cookies that Friday evening, wore my best blue dress, and drove to their home. My heart was pounding as I pulled up to the driveway. When I knocked, Emily opened the door, her face pale and nervous. Mom, I'm so glad you came, she whispered. Please, just act normal. He'll be here soon. The dining table was set beautifully. Candles flickered. Music played softly in the background. For the first time in a while, I felt a flicker of hope. But when Daniel walked in and saw me standing there, that hope vanished. His expression hardened instantly. Emily, what is this? I just thought maybe, she began. I told you I didn't want her here, he shouted. My stomach dropped. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She's your mother, Daniel. He turned toward me. I said I'd call. Mom, why can't you just listen? That's when something inside me went quiet, like a candle being snuffed out. I took my purse from the chair and looked at them both. I understand, I said softly. You don't have to explain anymore. And before anyone could stop me, I walked out. As I stepped outside, the cool air stung my face. I didn't cry, not yet. The tears would come later, when I was alone. But right then, I promised myself one thing. I wouldn't beg for love where it no longer lived. That night, I made a decision, one that would change everything. I didn't sleep much that night. The silence in my house felt heavier than ever. Every room whispered memories of him. His laughter in the hallway, the sound of his sneakers on the stairs, the way he'd sneak into the kitchen at midnight for milk and cookies. Now, all that is gone. When dawn finally crept through the curtains, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were swollen, my hair messy, and yet, behind the exhaustion, there was something new, a strange kind of stillness. For years, my entire world had revolved around Daniel. Every decision I made, every plan, every sacrifice, had been for him. And in the process, somewhere between raising him and letting him go, I had forgotten who I was. That morning, I made myself a cup of coffee, opened the window blinds, and for the first time in years, I looked at the world outside, not as a mother, but as a woman who still had life left to live. Days turned into weeks. I kept myself busy, cooking, tending to my small garden, visiting the library downtown. At first, everything I did felt mechanical, like I was moving just to fill the silence. But then, little by little, something shifted. I met people, kind people, ordinary people with extraordinary stories. There was Mr. Parker, a retired teacher who spent his afternoons reading poetry aloud to anyone willing to listen. And Clara, a widow who ran a small thrift shop where every item had a story attached. They reminded me that pain wasn't the end of living, it was proof that you had lived. Sometimes, we sat together on the library steps, sharing coffee and stories about our children, our regrets, our hopes. Clara once said something I'll never forget. Love your children, but don't lose yourself in them, because one day, they'll walk away and you'll need to know who's left standing in your mirror. Her words sank deep into my heart. One Sunday I visited the park Daniel used to play in when he was little. The swings creaked gently in the breeze, and I could almost see his small hands gripping the chains, his laughter echoing through the trees. I sat on a bench, clutching a thermos of tea, and whispered quietly, "Where did we go wrong, Daniel?" But the wind didn't answer. Instead, a little boy ran past me chasing a kite, his mother laughing behind him. For the first time in months, I smiled, a real, honest smile, because that's when I realized something simple yet powerful. Life doesn't stop because someone stops loving you. Around that time, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, not from Daniel, but from Emily. "Mom, I'm so sorry for what happened that night. Things have been difficult. Please don't give up on us. I know Daniel loves you. He's just struggling with things he won't talk about. Maybe you could write to him. Even if he doesn't answer, he'll read it." I read that letter 3 times. My hands trembled each time I reached the end. Maybe it was foolish, but that night, I took out an old notebook, the one I used to write his lunch notes in when he was in high school, and began to write. "Dear Daniel, I don't know what went wrong between us. Maybe I held on too tightly, or maybe I never learned how to let go. But please know this, I never wanted to be a burden. I only wanted to be part of your life, even if just in small ways. I miss you, son. I miss the boy who used to hold my hand when crossing the street, who shared his dreams at the dinner table. I know that boy is still somewhere inside you. No matter how far you go, you'll always have a home here. Love." Mom, I didn't expect an answer, but writing that letter felt like breathing again after holding my breath for too long. A few days later, I dropped it in the mailbox, and with it, I let go of the need to control how the story would end. Time kept moving. I started volunteering at the local senior center, reading stories to other elderly folks who didn't have families nearby. Their laughter, their warmth, it healed something inside me that I thought was gone forever. I started baking again, not for anyone else, but for myself. I planted daisies in the backyard. I painted the front porch a cheerful blue. Small things, but they made me feel alive. And slowly, peace found its way back into my home. Then, one evening, as I was folding laundry, I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. It was Emily. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. "Mom," she whispered, "Daniel's in the hospital." The room started spinning. "What happened?" "He collapsed at work. They said it's exhaustion and stress. He's been under a lot of pressure. Please, will you come?" Without a second thought, I grabbed my coat and followed her. The hospital was cold and quiet. Machines hummed softly in the background. When I saw Daniel lying there pale, hooked up to 4 lines, all the anger, all the hurt I'd carried melted away in an instant. He looked so fragile, so lost. I took his hand gently. It was cold. "Hey, sweetheart," I whispered. "It's Mom." He didn't open his eyes, but his fingers twitched slightly. I sat there for hours, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall. And in that silence, I prayed, not for forgiveness, but for healing. Because sometimes, Love doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes, it just needs to be there. That night, as I watched him sleep, I realized something profound. You can't force people to come back to you. But when you stop chasing, sometimes life finds a way to bring them home. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds of Daniel's hospital room. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was the only sound besides the occasional shuffle of nurses. I hadn't slept much. My hand never left his. Every so often, I would glance at the door, half expecting someone to barge in with bad news. But nothing happened. For once, the world seemed to pause, just long enough for me to breathe, to really see him. And then, slowly, Daniel's eyes fluttered open. "Mom," his voice was barely more than a whisper, raspy from disuse. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my throat tight with emotion. "It's me." Tears welled up in my eyes. I wanted to hug him, to hold him, to tell him everything I'd felt over the last months. But I didn't. I sat there, letting him take his time. He tried to sit up, but the nurse gently pushed him back. "You need to rest," she said. Daniel's eyes found mine again, and then for the first time in months, he spoke with raw honesty. I don't know why I yelled that night. I was angry, frustrated. I didn't know how to deal with everything, but I regret it. Every word, every scream. My chest tightened. All the pain, the loneliness, the nights I cried alone. It all came rushing back. "Daniel," I whispered, "I never stopped loving you. But you need to learn your own lessons." And I needed to find myself again. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if carrying the weight of years on his shoulders. When he opened them again, there was a vulnerability in his gaze I had never seen before. "I was wrong. Mom," he said, voice breaking. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you, how much you sacrificed. I'm so sorry." I reached out and held his hand, his small fingers wrapped around mine, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. Not the years of pain, not the fights, not the distance. Just this, a mother and her son, finally seeing each other again. A few days later, when Daniel was strong enough to go home, we returned to our house together, the same house that had witnessed years of tension, anger, and silence. But this time, something felt different. That evening, as I cooked dinner, Daniel watched quietly from the living room. He didn't speak, he didn't interrupt, he just observed, and I could see him absorbing the warmth of home. The small gestures, the life that had carried on without him. Finally, he came to the kitchen and hugged me. A hug filled with unspoken words, the kind of hug that says, "I'm sorry, I see you, and I love you." The next day we invited Emily over. I wanted her to see that reconciliation didn't have to be dramatic or loud. Sometimes, it was simply about showing up, being present, and letting love heal. As we sat together at the dining table, Daniel finally spoke again, louder this time. "Mom, thank you for everything, for never giving up on me, even when I tried to push you away, for being here, always." I smiled softly. "I never gave up on you, because I knew, deep down, you would come back. And you did." The room was silent for a moment, not the heavy silence of anger or distance, but a quiet peace that wrapped around us like a warm blanket. At that moment, I realized something. True strength isn't shown through anger or control, it's shown through patience, love, and the courage to let life take its course. Daniel's eyes met mine again, filled with gratitude, remorse, and love, and in that look, I felt every sleepless night, every tear, every lonely moment dissolve. We didn't need words to fix the past. Our hearts had spoken them all. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to a rhythm of normalcy. But it was a new normal, one built on honesty, respect, and understanding. Daniel started helping around the house, asking for advice, sharing his thoughts. Emily smiled more, her laughter echoing through the rooms, and I finally felt the peace I had craved for so long. I had learned something invaluable. No matter how deep the wound, love, patient, persistent, and unconditional, has the power to heal. Sometimes, the people who hurt you the most also teach you the greatest lessons. And sometimes, the silence after a storm is louder than any scream. Because when love survives the harshest trials, it speaks for itself. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to be justified. It simply is. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, our home began to feel alive again. Not just with activity, but with the warmth of connection. The tension that had once filled every corner of the house had vanished, replaced by small, unspoken acts of care. Daniel, who had once shouted at me in anger, now knocked gently on doors before entering. He asked about my day, helped with chores, and even started leaving little notes for Emily and me, small reminders that he cared. One evening, I sat on the porch, sipping tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and orange. Daniel came out and joined me, holding a small notebook. "Mom, I started writing," he said. "Thoughts, things I want to say but sometimes can't." I smiled. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Writing helps release what's inside." He handed me the notebook, his fingers brushing mine. I opened it and read the first line. I didn't realize how much I pushed away the people who loved me the most, until it was almost too late. I felt my eyes sting. The honesty in his words cut deeper than any anger ever could. "That's a brave thing to write, Daniel," I said softly. "Acknowledging it is the first step." He nodded, his eyes glistening. I don't want to lose you again, or Mom, or Emily. I want us to be a family." I reached over and hugged him tightly. "We are a family, Daniel, and nothing can ever change that as long as we keep choosing each other." The next day, I invited some of our close neighbors over for a small gathering. I wanted them to see the change, to witness that reconciliation wasn't just possible, it could be beautiful. When they arrived, Daniel greeted each one with genuine warmth. Emily laughed freely, no longer burdened by the tension that had shadowed our home. And I finally felt a sense of pride, not just as a mother, but as a woman who had endured, survived, and thrived. During the gathering, someone asked Daniel how he had changed so much in such a short time. He looked at me, smiled, and said, "It's my mom. She never gave up on me, even when I wanted her to. She showed me that love isn't just about words, it's about patience, forgiveness, and being there even when it's hard." I felt a lump in my throat. Every insult, every scream, every lonely night suddenly made sense. They had all led to this moment, a moment of understanding, of growth, of love that had withstood the test of time. That night, after everyone had left, I sat with Daniel and Emily in the living room. The soft hum of the night outside our windows seemed to echo the calm that had finally settled within us. "I know I yelled at you that night, in my own house," Daniel said quietly, "but I never knew, never realized, how much pain I was causing. I'm sorry, Mom." I smiled, holding his hand. "I know, sweetheart, and I forgive you. But more importantly, I want you to remember this. Our actions shape our relationships. Yes, but it's never too late to make things right." Emily leaned her head on my shoulder, and Daniel's arm came around both of us. In that quiet embrace, I realized that the hardest part wasn't the yelling or the rejection. It was learning to stand firm in love, to remain patient, and to trust that hearts can change. Months later, I shared our story online, not for fame or recognition, but to reach others who might be struggling with broken relationships in their own homes. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people across the United States. "This is exactly what I needed to hear. My daughter and I haven't spoken in years. I will try again tomorrow. Your story gave me hope that my son and I can heal too. Thank you for showing that patience and love can truly change hearts." Reading those messages, I realized something profound. Our story wasn't just ours. It was a story that countless families could relate to. A story about mistakes, forgiveness, and the power of unwavering love. And as I sat there, reflecting on the journey, I whispered quietly to myself, no matter how loud the anger, how deep the hurt, or how painful the silence, love always finds a way. And when it does, it silences everyone not with words, but with the truth of the heart. Have you ever faced a moment when someone in your family rejected you? Or maybe you've struggled to rebuild a broken relationship? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else. And don't forget to subscribe to Grandma Moments for more real-life stories of family, love, and resilience.